Good day ladies and gentlemen, I just read Mechanicum by McNeill, and while it has some good parts, I wouldn't call this my favorite Heresy novel by quite a margin. Mechanicus follows the betrayal of Kelber Hall and his followers on Mars. While the legions are executing their grand betrayal at Istvan, Horus has sent emissary Regulus to the Red Planet. Here he offers the Fabricator General, Kelber Hall, a whole bunch of dark tech magics in exchange for betraying the Emperor. With the relations between Terra and Mars already strained, he of course jumps to the War Master's camp, and the book then deals with the results of this decision. This involves some arcs with the Loyal Adepts, the Legio Tempestus, some Knights, and a whole bunch of Bolterporn. Meanwhile, there is also another arc that follows the gifted prodigy Dahlia. The inventor of the new sphere, Coriol Z, is gathering a group of young AdMech to make a device for her, and Dahlia is one of the people invited. This arc goes in quite some directions, but it would be a spoiler to say where. Trust me, it's fun though. So yeah, if you want to see how Mars fared during the Istvan debacle, then you might want to read this book for yourself. The biggest highlight for me was the entire story arc involving Dahlia. If I'm being honest, these sections almost felt like a different novel with how different the tone, characterization and writing style was. And compared to the rest of the novel, this arc was noticeably better. The only real criticism I have for the Dahlia arc is that it is very much a chosen prodigy kind of vibe, which I know might put some people off. The Dahlia arc has a bunch of cool characters that are fleshed out and given some emotional depth. We learn their backstories, explore some different Martian cultures, and see some cool modifications. There are furthermore some real character arcs and interactions between characters. However, with the exception of some politics at the start, the rest of the novel mostly brushes over the characterization in order to get back to the clinical battle scenes or descriptions. I mean, Kelber Hall and Fabricator Locum Kane are two of the most important Mechanicus characters at this point in time. Also in the novel they play crucial roles, but still, I know nothing about them after reading this. Another big highlight of the Dahlia arc is that it also features some variety in what is going on. In the Titan storylines, we just get Titans shooting at things on the Martian surface for 100 pages. However, here in the Dahlia story arc, we see inside a forge complex, we go on a road trip, we explore some secret caverns and more. One moment they are inventing something, one moment they are fighting a monster. This story was never repetitive, while the rest of the book mostly was. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I find that Titan or Night combat gets boring really quick, and similarly to Mortis by John French, this made up more of the novel than I would have liked. One thing I really didn't like was how misplaced the melodrama in this book was. It's a bit hard to explain without spoilers, but imagine that a certain very big event happens that has an effect for the entirety of the planet. In this book, the event itself is then barely covered and maybe a paragraph is spent on telling you some examples of what the consequences might be. What we will spend an entire chapter on, however, is giving overly dramatic metaphors, calling it names and hearing the same handful of characters repeat these things in conversation. It feels very much like reading the latter Siege books, but it completely lacks the build-up that is necessary to make it feel justified. Here the Dahlia arc does this much better, but still the final third also kinda suffers from it. In terms of cool Martian robot stuff, there's a bit of that, but not as much as you may have expected. The modifications that are described are mostly very simple or not covered in detail. The only one that stood out was Zend, who does get an elaborate description of her robot boobies. And that is not a joke. The Dark Mechanicum mutations are hardly explored, and even the high-ranking members of the cult get very little in the way of cool augmentations. I was a bit disappointed by this, as I'm used to the many cool AdMech descriptions found in the works of Haley, Reynolds or ADB. Then finally, I should also mention that the ending is really fucking weird. The book ends and then there is an addendum of plot points that apparently McNeill forgot to cover in the actual book or something. Without spoilers, imagine if Fulgrim ended with a random text blurb that said, "Oh hey, by the way, Ferrus Manus is now a ghost on the Vengeful Spirit." You get some complete curveballs that are not expanded upon whatsoever, and basically rely on you reading the rest of the Heresy and also some 40k novels to make sense of them. Really weird decision to do it this way in my opinion. I think Dahlia's arc deserves about 4 stars and the rest of the book about 2, so going with 3 heaping robot bosoms seems fair. Mechanicum has a fun, YA-like AdMech story, woven together with some poorly explored politics and a whole bunch of boring god machine combat. It is definitely a must read in terms of lore for AdMech fans though. So since the Dahlia arc is quite fun, I would still recommend it for those people, but for non-AdMech fans, I would suggest just skipping this. and all you really need to know for the other books is that Kelber Hall is the big traitor dude and Kane is the loyalist opposition leader.
You've reached the end of this Vox message. If this sparked your pleasure centers, make sure to anoint the subscribe button. Thank you for visiting Bathelloren. May the Omnissiah be with you.